What goes up must come down. Welcome to the Brand Breakdown. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Courtney.
And this is where we're going to track the rise and fall of big brands, from companies to celebs to pop culture phenoms and everything in between. Let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. We're so glad that you're here with us today. We have so much on the docket to talk about in terms of royal news. So I'm going to get right to it with our friend Courtney, who's our royal aficionado. We're going to start right away with Harry arriving in the UK for the Invictus. And I guess it's an annual service at St. Paul's, right?
No, it's the 10th anniversary service, because this is the 10th anniversary of Invictus Games. So it's like 10-year anniversary. So this was a special 10th anniversary Thanksgiving service that they did. And it's interesting. So Invictus is such an interesting beast, I think, because it's Harry's pet project, and it always has been, but it's something that he obviously started when he was still a working royal, just coming off of his time being an active military member. So Invictus is still kind of weirdly associated with the royals in that people always think of them when they think of Invictus. But it's Harry's thing. When Harry left the working royal world, he took Invictus with him. So it's not actually in any way, shape, or form affiliated with the royal family anymore. It's not supported by the Royal Foundation anymore. This is Harry's personal project. I also don't believe it has anything to do with Archewell. So this is Harry's personal project. So people are being weird about this 10th anniversary service because some people are saying that because the royals snubbed Harry by not attending the service. And to me, in my opinion, it's like, listen, Harry left the royal family. He made such a big deal about they wanted to be independent. He's made it very clear he doesn't even like his family that much. Why would the royals show up? Why would they feel like they need to go support him? But B, why would he want them there? Doesn't he want to be able to do this on his own without the royal shine on it, as it were? So social media has been a little bit weird about the stance on Invictus and what it means that the royals weren't there. I personally think it would have been weirder if they were. Maybe, I don't know, maybe if he was on good terms with his dad and his brother and they showed up to support him, that would be one thing. But the fact that he's made it very clear he doesn't like them, it would have been very strange if they suddenly showed up to support his personal endeavor.
So I don't know that he doesn't like them. I think that come on. He hasn't stopped loving his brother and his uncle and his dad and his stepmom and his daughter, not daughter-in-law, mother-in-law, sister-in-law. Sorry. I couldn't remember which in-law it was. He hasn't stopped loving them. And he and Kate were famously good friends. I think he just got caught up in his own angst and had some really bad behavior and said some really awful things.
I don't know. I kind of feel like he hates. I feel like he definitely hates Camilla. He made that very clear in Spare. There is no love lost there. And I feel like he might kind of hate his dad. There was that part in Spare where he talked about fantasizing, blowing his dad up with an Apache helicopter drone or something like that. Something really wild where it's you're talking about assassinating the king. I don't think that's a kosher thing to do right now.
I must have glossed over that part because I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, it was a really weird. It stuck out to me so much because I was like, that's not a thing a sane person should commit to writing. Because
hold on. I had to hold my hand up. That's not a sane thing that a publisher should allow someone like Harry to commit to publishing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I can't remember that part, but I know he had some enmity towards his dad, especially when he was in boarding school, because he felt so abandoned, I think. But I don't know. I can't imagine wanting to hurt my parents. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I loved my dad so much, and I love my mom so much. Although I would say my teenagers, maybe particularly one of them, probably wants to hurt me on a regular basis.
I mean, I think all teenagers go through that phase, but Harry's 40, so
Yeah, no, but I mean, we've talked about this before. I think he is stuck at what, 11 or 12 when his mom died.
yeah.
Um, because we've talked about that the trauma that you experience young in a young life when you have that kind of trauma, it sort of stunts you emotionally, and I think definitely he is emotionally stunted. Um,
Yeah, but then I
so
always
I
go
mean, there's
back to like his brother was only a couple years older than him and I mean, maybe has a little bit of a temper on him, but I think that's more indicative of like a family trait, as it seems all Windsors tend to have a temper. Um, but William seems rather well adjusted, having grown up with the same resources and support system and family. Like it's just so weird to look at William and Harry, and when people say like, "Oh, Diana's son," and it's like she had two kids. They've gone very
there's
different directions, even though they had the same path kind of laid out for them. It's
I'm
just
gonna
weird.
just tell you that having just had two teenagers that went through middle school and then now one's almost through high school, there is a huge difference between 12 and 15 emotionally, intellectually, spiritually. A huge, huge, huge difference from your brain development to how you understand the world. So I think it would make sense to me that William would do better at 15 than Harry would do at 12. I'm just gonna say.
Yeah,
Um,
no, that makes sense. There's like such a huge maturity level difference and
yeah, I
even
mean, he was
understanding of the
probably,
world.
yeah, he was probably not in puberty yet. I mean, I don't really, I mean, I'm not going to delve into his puberty because weird, but like he probably wasn't at that stage yet where William would have been fully in it. And the brain development that's happening for William is not happening yet for Harry. So Harry's still very much a little boy,
Right.
at, 11 or 12. I don't remember how old he was, but young, tiny, like a little tiny sixth grader, probably, whatever that would be in, UK boarding school, fifth form, sixth form, something, I don't know. But anyway, so I just think it makes sense that he would be much more emotionally stunted than William was. And think about this, their personalities are so different. Harry is, as he describes himself, the spare, where William is the, king to be. So the level of support, while maybe similar, would not have been the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, it would be the same in terms of like they had the same family around them, the same cousins around them, the same aunts and uncles around them. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that from the if you can separate the firm and the family, I don't think the family would have treated I mean, if anything, it's possible that the family would have babied Harry more
Exactly.
because he
Exactly.
was the baby. Where so then you would think that William would be the one who grew up bitter and resentful because oh nobody paid attention to me when my mom died and everybody coddled my brother. And like that's not what happened?
Yeah. Yeah, but you hit the nail on the head. If they babied Harry in any way while he was already still a baby, that would emotionally
Mhm.
stunt him even more.
Yeah.
So, and William would have been said, chin up, soldier. You got to like move on. And that's a whole different mindset. It all comes down to mindset. Um, there's a great book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. Carol Dweck, I think that's right. But anyway, it talks all about how your mindset can determine like your success in life. And I think that Harry and William have very, very different mindsets just from birth. Right? They're two different people who were born with two different
Mhm.
brains. So I think that you're absolutely right. He it was infantilized. He also infantilized himself, and he continues to be infantilized even well into adulthood. So, anywho, that's enough pop psychology for the day. Moving on. So
Moving on.
continue. So sorry.
So, interestingly, while people are saying, oh, the royal family did Harry dirty by snubbing him and not attending Invictus, granted, we don't know that they were invited or not. Um, the royal family was actually out in force, as they say. There was the first Buckingham Palace garden party of the season. So, on the same day as the church service, which I believe was yesterday or the day before, I don't even know, sometime this week. The royals were out at Buckingham Palace greeting 5,000 members of the public who are all associated, as we discussed, I think, in our last episode, they're all associated with various charities and patronages and nonprofits, and basically people who do good work in the community and are nominated and invited to attend these events. So the royals were working, and I bet you could probably imagine that an event for 5,000 people has probably been on the books for a while. Like, this is not an event that they just threw together when they heard Harry was going to be hosting his own shindig across town. Like, this has been planned for a year. Um, so yeah, people said that Harry got snubbed because his family wasn't there. We don't actually know if they were invited, but we do know that all of the royals were out working, greeting the crowds, saying hello. Obviously, William and Catherine weren't there. William was in Cornwall. Um, the Duchy of Cornwall is breaking ground on his homelessness project, which is essentially to build housing for homeless people on some of the land that the duchy owns. So William was in Cornwall, and Kate obviously is unavailable at the moment. But I think maybe the bigger snub to dive into would be the fact that Harry was in London and he did not see his father. And that was confirmed by Harry's spokesperson, who said that they basically couldn't coordinate their schedules and that the king was very busy, and Harry respects that his dad was too busy to see him, which seemed kind of weird. And I don't know who I think it's weird for, but it's weird.
I think it was a snub. It feels like a snub to me because, like, if I came into town and my mom was really busy for a weekend, which often happened, when I didn't live in the same town as my mom and dad, I would come home and sometimes they were busy. They were going to the theater or the symphony or doing something, but they made time for me. You know what I mean? Even if they had the busiest schedule ever, they would still make a half an hour for me.
Right.
Um, so I think it was a snub because you can make time to see your flesh and blood,
Right.
right?
If you really want to see, like I said, like they could have met for a drink at 9 o'clock at night or coffee at 5 in the morning or something. Like, it didn't have to be strictly between working hours. Um, and so it kind of makes me just wonder, is it still, there had been rumors like after everything happened, after Oprah, after all of that, especially after the Queen died, that no member of the royal family was willing to meet with Harry privately because nobody trusted that anything they said in a conversation would remain confidential. And especially, you know, Meghan's got a new show coming out. Harry's got a new show coming out. Meghan's just re-signed for a second season of the podcast, even though it won't be out for a year. But I wonder if the royal family is back to being kind of really cautious and being like, we don't know what's going to come back around. We know there's still 3 books in this 4-book deal that are floating out there, and we're just not going to talk to you in a way that could come back to bite us in the butt. And if they think the only way to do that is to not speak to him, I mean, I'm sure they could have a conversation and keep everything very light and fluffy. And it just makes me think that things are way, way worse than we assume, you know?
I think they probably are because think about this. Harry could have made arrangements to bring one or both of his children with him to the UK.
Yeah.
Even if his wife didn't want to come, he could have brought the kids. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think that Charles has ever even met Lilibet in person, right?
I don't think so, no.
I don't think so. And if I kept my mom's grandchildren away from her for years on end, well, we wouldn't be speaking either. I'll just say that. Um, so I don't know. I think it's way worse than you and I realize because obviously we're not insiders in any way. We're speculators and spectators, speculating spectators. So anyway, I just think that I think it's got to be worse than we realize if they are publicly announcing that they will not be seeing each other, right? Because they didn't even have to do that. Who on which end did that? Who said like, "Hey, we're going to announce publicly that we're not going to see each other," just to make it clear that the rift is bigger than everyone thinks.
Yeah, and it came from Harry's office. It was an official like response to a question from Harry's office. So like makes it seem like he's a little bit butthurt about it.
Butthurt. Oh my God, I was going to say butthurt. Yes, butthurt is a perfect word for it. And again, just makes him seem like almost like a sore loser. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it doesn't make sense to me. Okay, so we know they didn't see each other. So we know Invictus Games he had no support other than what Lord Spencer came. Is that who came?
Yep, Earl Spencer and his sister were there. So Diana's brother and one of her sisters were in attendance, and also um like a few representatives, like there was representatives from NATO there. But the Earl and I can't remember which of the sisters it was, but they were the only two family members in attendance. So also some of the pictures I've seen of the service, it was quite empty in general.
Oh,
It was
really?
not a full house. And St. Paul's is a massive, massive
Yeah, it
church. I
is.
believe it's bigger than Westminster Abbey.
It
Um,
is. I love St.
and
Paul's. It's so
yeah,
beautiful.
and it was not full. Um, so
Oh. Every
yeah.
time when we were in London when I was little, we always went to church at St. Paul's
Oh,
or Westminster Abbey, like at St. Margaret's or whatever.
that's
Um,
nice.
I
I'm
know, I
jealous.
know, I know. Anyway, well, okay, so moving on. So let's talk about the Nigeria trip because I have to tell you, like, I don't completely understand uh, how how it all came about, why it's called a royal tour. Everyone's up in arms. Like, kind of give me the breakdown there because I really want to have a good understanding of why I should feel one way or another.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with this. As we just discussed, Meghan did not attend the Invictus Games ceremony in London. However, Meghan did fly into Heathrow to connect on her way down to Nigeria. So her and Harry like met up at the airport, basically. So Meghan was in London for a period of
Interesting.
time. Yeah. And she
Okay.
chose to stay in the airport rather than leave the airport and be in public in London, which I think is a very interesting move. But anyway, so
That is
why
interesting.
yeah, it's very weird to me.
Do you
I've
think it's because she knows that she's so unpopular?
I think so. Yeah, I read something that said that she didn't want to go to the Invictus event in London because she didn't want to be like booed by crowds or whatever. And she just doesn't want to. She had her like people anytime there was like a source close to Meghan, her people would always say that she has no intention of ever setting foot in the UK again after the Queen's funeral. Um, so we'll see. Maybe she's actually never going to go back to London ever again, which I
Wow.
think would be a problem. I think eventually Harry will be like, listen, lady, like, this is where I'm from. You're gonna spend some
It
time
depends
here.
on it depends on the trajectory of their relationship,
Yeah.
right? So, when you've been married as long as I have, and all my friends and whatever, you can see patterns where people begin to miss their families or want their families or need their families or the opposite. You know what I
Right.
mean? It depends on how healthy your relationship is, how you feel in that relationship. Um, it's there's a whole gamut of emotions that run deep for him, both from a familial standpoint and then from a marriage standpoint. So it all depends, in my opinion, on how the trajectory of their marriage goes. Which, of course, we want them to be happy because we want them to be successful and sort of come out of this at some point with some maturity. Um, but if I was from London and my wife or husband said, I'm never going to set foot there again, I would have a difficult time. That was my childhood.
Right. Like I'm sure he still has some friends there, and he's very friendly with his Spencer family obviously, and he's very friendly with the York princesses, so it's kind of like he has, even if he's not close with his brother and his father anymore, he still has family there, he still has friends there, he still has like his various patronages there. Like it's just seems a little bit weird to be like you're never going to be able to go back unless it's for these like 48-hour whistle stop meetings. Like it just seems a little bit unsustainable. Although it's been however many years now, and this has been how they've handled it. So
I think that there's a lot more there than than meets the eye. So we'll just have to see
Yeah.
how things unfold. All right, so walk me through the breakdown of Nigeria and what that trip means and why so many people are up in arms about it.
Sure. So the first interesting thing about this entire Nigeria trip is that people are saying it's basically like a cosplay of Meghan and Harry being royal. Because when you think of a royal tour, you've got the royals visiting a country, they're doing multiple engagements a day, they've got this jam-packed schedule, and they're there at the invitation of the government. And they're there at the invitation of the government of the country they're visiting, and also at the request of the UK government. So Harry and Meghan's trip to Nigeria has a lot of kind of factors of a royal tour in that they have been invited by the Nigerian government, but they are not there on behalf of the British government. They are there on behalf of Invictus. And I guess this event, or this, we'll call it a tour for the sake of just like being easy and consistent, but it's not a royal tour. It's just a business trip. It's a business trip. Business people go on business trips, and that's what this is. But basically, my understanding is that last year at the Invictus Games in Dusseldorf, the Nigerian representatives were speaking with Harry, and Nigeria is trying to get the Invictus Games to be hosted in Nigeria. And so they've arranged this like big, huge tour for Harry and Meghan to come, and they're there at the invitation of the like Nigerian Ministry of Defense to come do these engagements and whatever. So it's this like quasi cosplay royal tour that isn't actually royal because it has nothing to do with the British government or the royal family. It's strictly related to Invictus. But it has all of the like markings and packaging of a royal tour, which is very weird because if Harry and Meghan didn't want to be working royals, why are they doing one of the parts of being a working royal that Meghan actually has famously complained about? And during one of her tours, her actual royal tours that she did, she complained and said something like, "Why am I not being paid for this?" So maybe they are being paid for this. They've done a couple of engagements or whatever. It's so weird to call them an engagement because it's not an engagement. But yeah, like they're not really engagements, they're just like meet and greets. It's like a meet and greet, like when a celebrity does a meet and greet. So they've done a couple of them under the Archwell Foundation umbrella. I think they went to a school earlier today or something. And they're going to be meeting with some Nigerian military because again, they're there at the invitation of the Nigerian Ministry of Defense. So they're doing some royal stuff. They've had photo calls. They did an interview. They've got all the like photo ops and everything, but it's not royal. It's not. They are not in there in their capacity as members of the royal family. The UK government has nothing to do with this. This is strictly about Invictus, and also they've like shoehorned Archwell into it a bit. And that's why
You
people
think,
think it's so weird because it's just weird.
I thought Archwell went away and it's now like some other stuff.
Archwell, the foundation, the charitable foundation, still exists.
Except
But
it
so
doesn't make any.
yeah, basically what they did is like all of their profit making endeavors. So what they did, so they have Sussex.com, which is the office of Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. And then they've still got Archwell Foundation, which is their charitable arm. They've still got Archwell Productions. Um, and then the office of Harry and Meghan is what oversees both of those things, and then everything else that they're doing that doesn't really fit into the foundation or productions, which I imagine is things like Harry's book or um, I don't know, any other random things that they may decide to do. Interestingly, they still link to their Sussex Royal website. Oh, it's down.
The
Oh, they've
Sussex Royal
updated it.
website is down.
Yes, well, it's still up, but now they've got a splash page on it that says the site was established in 2020 and sets out the work streams of Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, prior to their move to the United States. To learn more about the royal couple and their philanthropic endeavors, click here. And then it redirects back to Sussex.com.
Because they're not allowed to use their royal, right? The Sussex royal title.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so the office of Harry and Meghan is just where they where they're posting, like, it looks like, in May they've got a few press releases. Oh no, this one's from this morning in Nigeria, supporting students in Abuja. Scotty's Little Soldiers. This one is when he was in London, so like yesterday. And this one is also from Invictus Games. So it looks like, but like Travelist is here. Travelist is one of Harry's, I don't know. I don't know if it's a nonprofit or if it's a for-profit entity. It's something to do with like global travel and global warming and stuff like that. Sentabale is under Sussex.com. So it's just where they're kind of keeping their like anything that doesn't fit explicitly into the foundation or productions, I guess.
All right, so they're in Nigeria. They're not really doing royal engagements, but they're acting like they're doing royal engagements. Are they getting paid by the Nigerian government?
So I don't know. I imagine their expenses have all been paid by the Nigerian government. Flights, hotels, food, all that stuff. I don't think that they are collecting like a paycheck from it. However, because this event came about because Nigeria wants to host the Invictus Games, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some sort of perhaps donation made to Archwell that was supposed to be earmarked for, like one of those business type of deals where people are like, oh, we made a donation. Now do the thing we want you to do.
All right, so can I just say something about that really quickly?
Yes.
Um, so while Nigeria has a really high GDP, it's like almost 500 billion, um, which makes it like one of the wealthiest African countries. It's probably all those phone calls to send money to your uncle or your kid or whatever. But despite all that, there's 200 million people in Nigeria, and over 50% of them, so like 110 million Nigerians, live below the poverty line. So it kind of makes me feel weird in my insides that they would take money from the Nigerian government. Um, you know, when you think about the how poor Africa is as a continent, but how poor so many of the people are within the places. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I think that maybe the Nigerian government could look at this and be like, okay, well, maybe having Invictus Games here raises tourism, raises commerce, right? You know what I mean? Like maybe the investment in having them come to this event or like this fake tour, paying for the fake tour, and then paying whatever else needs to be paid in order to host the event at some point, the Invictus Games itself. Maybe there's like the trade off of this is going to provide, it's going to create jobs because they've got to build stadiums and stuff like that. It's going to increase tourism, at least for that portion of time. So maybe there's, that type of risk benefit analysis that they're doing in deciding that it's worth it.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. I'm sure that they will get a lot of return from the visit. It just makes me feel funky.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it's weird,
Anyway,
but
moving on. Tell me more.
I mean, that's kind of all I really know. The Nigerian tour, hate calling it a tour, but I don't know what else to call it. The Nigerian business trip got underway this morning, so they are still in progress. Um they, like I said, they visited a school, they've met, I believe they had lunch with the highest ranking military officials in the country. So they are there. They are flying the flag for Invictus and Archwell, not for the British government. Um, and I guess we will see as future Invictus host countries and cities are announced if this was a successful trip for Nigeria to have paid for. Um, but yeah, it's weird. It's just weird. I don't get it.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't.
get the like, let's pretend to be royal while we bash the royals and everything they do. And while we say that, like, leaving the royal family, we took a freedom flight and all of that stuff. And then everything they do is basically the same stuff they would have done if they were royal. Like I just don't get it. I just don't understand.
I mean, I'll have to tell you, like if I was living in a palace and had amazing clothes by whoever, Alexander McQueen or whatever, because I love Alexander McQueen, although my body type would never fit that. But if I had everything that they had, I would certainly not call it a freedom flight. They were not like being held hostage anywhere. That I think
Right.
that I take offense to that, frankly, because there's so many people in the world who are being held hostage or in untenable situations or
Mhm.
being trafficked or whatever. It wasn't really a freedom flight. That can be an ironic thing if you want to call it a freedom flight, ironically. But I take exception to that. I just have to say, I think that's wrong. I mean, just look at all the, hostages in countries right now that we would like to be freed. That
Right.
would be a freedom flight to me, but whatever.
Mhm.
All right, so let's wrap it up by talking about Prince William giving an update on our favorite girl.
Our
Like,
favorite girl. Yeah.
yeah,
So like I said at the top of this episode at some point, William is out on engagements this week. He is in Cornwall. And today he was on the Isle of Scilly. Is that how they pronounce it? Scilly, the Isle of Scilly. Um, and somebody asked him, I believe he made a visit to a hospital, and a healthcare worker asked him how Kate was doing, and he said that she was doing very well. So that's kind of the most um, comprehensive update we've received on Kate in a while, that she is doing very well. And I'm going to hold on to that as being true and indicative of, hopefully we'll see her out later this summer.
yeah, I hope so too, and I hope that she's recovering well, and I hope her chemo is almost wrapped up, or her radiation, or whatever she's doing
Mhm.
prophylactically. So I'm happy for that. I think that feels like that the king is all wrapped up with his. Um,
Yeah. They said that yesterday, part of the reason he was unable to see Harry is because yesterday he had some medical appointments, and after those medical appointments he was required to rest. So I don't know if perhaps he was having another treatment, or if it was just like a regular doctor check-in, but he is still obviously under the care of a doctor. He is not, they're not saying that he's in remission or anything, but what they've been saying is that his doctors are pleased with his progress and they are not concerned with him being in close quarters with like members of the public. And also I think the time of year now that a lot of the engagements and stuff can be outdoors, um, and there's a lot less, cold and flu and stuff going around. I think his doctors were more comfortable with him engaging with the public. Um, but they haven't said anything about him being in remission or anything like that.
yeah. I think people are pretty cautious about that because, you know, having seen it many times over, sometimes you think you've arrested it and then it comes back in a different way. And so, people are pretty cautious about that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, well, okay, here's what I do wish for Harry and Meghan, because I like to circle back and, let people know that we don't wish them ill. We wish them to find their own lives that are separate from the royals because that's what they left. So I wish for them that they would find success in their endeavors that are in service to other people. And again, that they, um, walk away from the publicity that continues to low key bash other people.
Hmm.
Uh, because I think that when you are unhappy, it is so much easier to bash other people, but it doesn't make you happier. In fact, it diminishes you again and again and again until you're left with nothing eventually.
Yeah.
So I hope that they're able um, to at some point walk away from doing that stuff and just be happy humans who have a very luxurious lifestyle.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree.
anyway, that's
It's
my hope for
interesting.
them.
On social media, after our last episode, you and I had been saying like we wish them well. And I received a comment from somebody and it said, I generally agree with what you guys say on the pod, but I just can't wish the Sussexes well, not just for their action toward the Waleses, but especially to the staff they bullied. Their inability to take accountability is breathtaking. How can people wish them well after all of that? people keep moving the goalpost of what's acceptable behavior for them, and it's really disgusting. And then I responded to that person and said, I guess what it is that I wish them well because I don't wish them harm. I don't want to see anybody fail. I'm not a fan, and I don't think they've treated anybody in a very favorable way, but maybe if they can do something where they're flourishing on their own terms, they'll be happier and less awful, was my direct quote there.
Yeah,
But
I'm
yeah,
not
it seems people
excusing
took
them.
issue with us even just saying we wish them
Yeah.
well.
Okay, so then I have to, if you've gotten to the end of this episode and you're still listening, I want you to know that I'm not excusing any of their behavior, and they need to make what they have done right with the people that they've done it to and within themselves.
Hmm.
I think part of wishing them well is wishing that they would have the maturity and insightfulness to see how they've harmed other people and make amends, and how they're harming themselves and make amends, and just to be generally productive and good people. That's what I mean by wishing them well, because if they were to if they were to do those things and make amends, and not only within the family but also with the people that they hurt, then I think that we can wish them well, because anyone can be, I feel like mostly almost anyone can be redeemed. They can be redeemed.
Hmm.
There's redemption for everyone if you want it. I mean, maybe there's a couple people I would say that's not true for. Like, because there is true evil in the world. So I'm going to put that in quotation, in parentheses, sorry.
Right.
But I think
And
that
these
there
people
is
are not true evil. They're
right, right,
immature and
right,
petulant and
right,
annoying, but they're not evil people.
right, right. So I think there is redemption. I think there's redemption for all people, mostly. I'm going to take out the evil people. So I don't want to hear. They're definitely evil people, and I don't know that there's redemption for them. But for just general people who are broken, I think there's redemption.
Hmm.
I wandered around that, but
Yeah.
anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure. And like, again, I wish them well because I don't wish them harm. You know what I mean? Like, I guess it's almost, how what's that saying? Like, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And like, maybe
Oh
I'm just
yeah,
indifferent to them. Like, I don't hope anything bad happens to them. I want them to have a nice life. I want them to be happy. I don't, I'm not rooting against them. I'm not necessarily rooting for them. I'm just kind of
right.
like, whatever, guys. Keep giving me good podcast content.
Well, I think that there's no doubt that they will continue to do that. For sure. All right. Well, I think that's everything we have today. I'm sure there'll be a lot coming out next week as they wrap up their Nigeria trip, and as I guess the garden parties continue, and
Hmm.
uh, things like that. And maybe we'll get another update on some health things. Other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend,